Hi, welcome to Primo's Pearls. I'm Amy, the woman behind Primo's Pearls. Today we're going to make a really easy Santa wreath using the materials that you purchased in your kit. So your kit includes a 12-inch metal wreath form, a skein of yarn, and a Santa hat. Other items that you will need: a pair of scissors, and some sort of glue. I'll be using a hot glue gun. If you are using a hot glue gun and you are doing this project with children, please, supervise them so that they don't get burnt. Now, the yarn is this really fun loop yarn. So we're going to just take the paper off. There are always two ends to a skein of yarn. There's one that just kind of hangs off the side, and then there is usually one in the middle. You can choose to pull from the middle if you prefer, or you can just let it unravel from the side. When I'm knitting, I pull from the middle, but for this project, it really doesn't matter. If your yarn ends up kind of twisted, then we just take a minute or two to untwist it very gently. Okay, so take your tail, your end, and we need to start with a straight piece. And the way to do that is you take the loops and you cut them. So find the first loop, and up here in the middle where it connects is a string. So start here on the bottom. Your loop is going to look like a U, and just pull the yarn back. There's a little string. Just take your scissors and cut it right there. And what it does is it gives you a little tail to start with. Now, if you need it bigger, and I think I do because my fingers are kind of chunky and I can't tie things really small, just do the same to the next loop. So you find your loop, separate it. Okay. Now you have a straight piece to start. Your wreath form, and it's hard to see this in video, you can see it in person a little bit better. It's not a flat wreath, right? It kind of angles up from the outer ring to the interior ring. So if you're not sure which is like up or front, I want you to look at your wreath. These metal segments on the back are closed, but on the front, you can see that that's where it's open. All right. So the open part is going to be the front of your wreath. If you have not seen my videos before, I do want to kind of give you a warning. I don't script them. So what you're getting in the video is what you get if you were here in person taking the class with me. It is authentic Amy for all that is. So we're going to take our tail and we're going to start anywhere on the wreath because it's a circle, right? It doesn't matter where we start. So just take it and tie the tail around the wreath. You can choose if you want to tie it around all three. I just usually just tie it around the most inner one. Okay. And I usually do a double knot just to make sure it stays. Having more difficulty doing this than I thought. There we go. All right, so here's my knot. Now, if you have extra after you've tied your knot, just cut it off. I will warn you, you can kind of see how it's sticking on my scissors. When you cut the yarn, it sheds a little bit, but for the most part, we'll be fine. All right, now for this wreath, we're going to wrap around about 3/4 of the way, give or take. So hold it however it's comfortable for you. I am right-handed, so for me, it's most comfortable to go around this way. If it's more comfortable to go that way for you, whatever is the most comfortable, okay? I would start next to one of the segments, and I'll show you why here in a minute. We're going to take our yarn and just take your skein of yarn, push it through the middle, and pull it. And you can see it does just like loop very easily. This yarn can get twisted. You can straighten it as you go. It's much easier to just kind of do an overall towards the end. So don't worry if it's starting to get, you know, like it's getting a little twisted, the loops are getting twisted on each other. It's going to be fine. Trust the process. All right, so through the middle and pull it through. This is the point where if you have music you want to listen to, or maybe you have a movie you're watching, or the kids are watching a movie and you don't really want to watch it, this is a good time to do this. Just keep pulling it through, through the middle and through. Okay. I'm going to show you something here in a minute, but I want to get kind of to my segment here. All right. A couple of things you should know. So here I've just done what I do, like maybe 6 turns around, and it looks like I filled the segment, right? I want you to take it and push it back to the beginning. You see it basically, I have much less than I thought. The reason we're going to push it back is it gives you more fullness. Now, this project is yours. So if you don't want it as full, then you don't have to push this far. If you push it back and you're like, wow, that's a lot, just spread it back out in that segment. But what we don't want is this. We do not want to be able to see the metal wreath form beneath the yarn, okay? So when you push it and make it full, then it fills that in. And like I said, it's up to you how full you want to do it. I would recommend though, working like one section at a time. When you get to this section, push it back and just keep doing that until it's as full as you want it. Once the yarn crosses these segments, it's a little harder to push it back 2 sections, okay? So just keep going, keep rolling, keep pushing it back. All right, so we're going to take our yarn through the middle. This one, I think especially, you kind of do want it really full because it's supposed to be Santa's beard, right? And Santa has a very full beard. Take the yarn, pull it through. If the yarn starts going in a different section or it goes in a different way, just pull it and straighten it up. It's fine. Keep going. The reason I said it doesn't really matter how you start your yarn, you can kind of see what's happening, right? Once you start using the yarn, it basically, the skein basically unravels. So just, you end up sort of with something like this, almost looks like a popcorn string. Just keep hold of your center and keep pulling. Okay. So again, just to show you from this perspective, you're looking at the front of my yarn, or of my wreath, coming through the middle. Okay. And just keep going. So if you have a cat who likes to play with yarn, you might not want to do this in front of them, or it's going to be kind of counterproductive. Or in my case, it's my beagles who like to take off with my yarn and run around the living room with it. So that's why I'm doing this here. All right. So just pull. It may occasionally get stuck on the wreath form. Just keep pulling. Here it is. All right. Now, when you have your segment as full as you think you want it to be, I mean, like I said, you can keep pushing it back, but it's really up to you. You can kind of just run your fingers through it a little bit to fluff it. And you've hit the segment and it's time to keep going. Just keep rolling. And it's going to cover that, all right? So I think that's probably about as full as I want it. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Let me do a couple more. You can always take the wreath you're working on and go hang it on your door or hang it on the wall where you might be displaying it, and kind of step back and take a look, and that will also be a good way to tell if you have it as full as you want it to be. All right. Okay, so you can see I've hit this divider, and we're just going to keep going. And it will cover that so you will not see it. There goes my yarn onto the floor. Like I said, this is why I'm not doing it at home. Well, plus the beagles bark a lot, so it's quieter here. Means less that I have to do for voiceover if I end up having to do a voiceover. As you work, if you need to reposition the wreath so that it's most comfortable for you, that's totally fine. So as I work, I tend to turn it so that I'm kind of holding it here and not reaching from above. And at this point, it is really just strings of yarn. There is no skein left at this point, and that's okay. See, it's just a long string. Almost looks like popcorn. There were a few years in elementary school, and I think it was probably something to do with like one of the church clubs, but we would string popcorn. I remember stringing it and putting it on the tree in the center of our town, which sounds more glamorous than it was. There's basically, in the center of town, several roads like kind of combine, and there's like a Y. So there was a pine tree that was planted there, and it is known in town as the ring tree. Although the one that was there when I was a kid is gone. I don't know, they're on their second or third one after that. But I remember we like strung popcorn on it one year. We also went caroling one year. And then that was the only year because it was cold. Nobody had fun. And this is really what you'd get if you were here in person with me. I tend to ramble. I tend to just, tell stories because I am a storyteller. Okay, so here we can see it's starting to get a little tangled. Just gently pull. And it's going to come undone. Set your wreath down if you need to. The loops just sometimes get hung up on each other. Okay. if you pull it too hard, you can rip the yarn. And ask me how I know that. So don't like this, but just gently, see, it's coming undone. You may have to do this several times to untangle it. I don't mind untangling the yarn because I do it so often with knitting. But think of it like Christmas lights or your necklaces if they get tangled, anything like that. All right. And remember, just keep pushing it backward so that you are achieving the fullness you want. It does get hard to tell where's the end, what I'm working on. See how it wants to tangle, but then even if you just hold it like that, it basically comes right undone. If you do end up with a knot that you can't untangle, it is okay to cut the yarn and just do like we did at the beginning, okay? So take a loop, cut the loop off basically so that it makes a tail, and then cut as close to the knot as you can. And then on the other side of the knot, cut as close as you can and tie it on again, just like we did at the beginning, and keep going. You will not see it. There are several that I've done where I've had to add in yarn, or there was a knot and I just could not untangle it. You're not going to see where you stopped and started. And one of the reasons for that, well, you will see, but it won't matter. One of the reasons that everything kind of blends in is because we are smushing it back, right? All right. All right, so you can see we've got 2 of our segments almost done. I said we were doing like 3/4 of this, so just keep going. And it's not going to be precise. I am kind of going to eyeball it. If you are somebody who would prefer it more precise, you absolutely could bring out a measuring tape and, you know, calculate, but I'm not going to do that. Also, try not to hit yourself in the face with the wreath form because that doesn't feel great. All right, so again, we've hit the segment. I'm going to just keep rolling. I call it rolling, but it's really wrapping, I guess, isn't it? We're just wrapping the wreath form. The wreath down so that I can untangle. This yarn is fun, but it does sometimes get twisted. There it goes. All right. I have not made anything with this yarn other than the wreaths. Now, I know people had made, it was very popular for making blankets. It was an easy way to let kids kind of make something. But I thought the yarn wreaths were fun. The really odd thing, when I started Primrose Pearls in 2012, one of the things I was making a lot of was yarn wreaths, but it wasn't this style yarn. It was just regular yarn. And I wrapped styrofoam wreaths with yarn and then made all kinds of, different decorations and different themes and stuff because I had seen them all over Pinterest, and they ended up, I put all this time into it, and they were not great sellers, and they were not the easiest to do. So I just ended up discontinuing them. And when I was looking for craft projects that could be I could do as a class, and I found a yarn wreath that was with this loopy yarn, I did sort of laugh because sometimes things come full circle. Remember, just smush it every so often to make sure that you are getting it full and that we do not see the wreath form. And if you see it, like there's one spot right here kind of on the bottom, that's going to be fine. We're not going to worry about it. You just really don't want it through here where you can see the wreath form. Another tangle to undo. There we go. It's kind of satisfying when it just like pulls itself apart. I don't know. Now you can also, you saw I just did, pulled through several at a time and then kind of tightened it up. That's whatever works for you. I think this is gonna look neat though. All right, so we're about halfway there. I'm gonna do, I think, another segment. Here's why I say we're only gonna do like 3/4. Our Santa hat is gonna kind of sit on this, just to give you an idea. So we don't need to wrap under the Santa hat. But I for sure need to do at least one more section. So you can always just take your hat, kind of place it on there and see how much more you want to add. There is enough yarn to do the whole wreath if you wanted to, but then I don't think you would have enough yarn to do the mustache part that we'll be adding. So just keep that in mind as I grab my scissors. Okay. There's a point when I'm doing these and I get about halfway that I think I'm not going to have enough yarn. And I've done several of these wreaths and I know I have enough yarn because I buy the same yardage or make sure that if I'm buying smaller skeins of yarn, I have the same amount of yardage, but still there's a point where I think it's not going to happen. It will sort of flatten out where you're holding it. So again, just fluff. And really, all I do is just run my fingers over it, kind of like this. I'm losing one of my rings. All right. Once again, it is time to untangle. Here we go. As you near the point where you think you're near the end, make sure you push it back so that you have it as full as you want it. And this is the point, if I were wrapping the whole thing, where I think I don't have enough yarn. But I am not going to let you run out. So if you have purchased the kit, then you have enough yarn. I am going to carry it over the divider, the separator here, just a little bit. All right. Now, this is the point where we kind of want to decide how much further we're going to go. So take your Santa hat and it is meant to kind of sit like off to the side. You could, if you wanted to, yes, you could put it on straight. It kind of flops. So however you decide you want it, and that will tell you how much more you need to wrap, right? So I kind of wanted it to sit off center, if I can. So I've got a little bit more to wrap. We do want to have a little bit of yarn under it so that we have something to glue the hat to, right? So I do have a couple more I need to do. You can check it as many times as you need to. There's no problem. And I just realized I'm wearing a fall shirt and I should have been wearing a Santa shirt. Really, I was trying to go for something that wasn't going to be distracting on video, and it's a little cooler, and I haven't worn this yet this year, so I thought, yeah, let's go ahead and wear it. All right, I think I'll do one more. That should probably get me where I want to be. All right, so because I'm doing mine kind of off center, it's going to make sense. Just trust the process, okay? I think that's going to work. All right. Now we're going to do basically the same thing we did to start the wreath. When you have gone as far as you feel that you want to go out a couple inches and just cut. So leave a couple inches of loops. I don't know how many inches I've got there, like 6 or so. Cut the excess. Now keep this because we are going to use it for the mustache. Now on your loops, so here I've got a tail, cut. If you need to cut another one, go ahead. All right. Take your extra and wrap it around again. And you want your tail or your knot to end up on the back, right? So I've got it on the back, and now I can just tie it. Just as we did at the beginning. Just make sure it's secure. You can do a double knot if you want. I'm having an issue with even just a single knot. All right. If you end up on the front, just push it through to the back. And then if you end up with a little bit more, just cut it off, just like we did at the beginning. All right. Now this is the point where you can kind of fill in, just sort of go through and fluff everything. And we're also at the point where we're going to need to use our hot glue gun. All right, so we have our wrapped wreath. We've left room because we're going to put the hat here, so there was no reason to really fill this in with the yarn. And we are at the time where we need the glue gun. So if you are working with children, please supervise them with the glue gun. We're going to take our Santa hat. If you wanted it to not be so floppy, you could stuff something in this. Newspapers, paper towels, bubble wrap, anything like that. I didn't include that in the kit, but you absolutely could if you wanted to stuff the hat. I just liked kind of the way it looked, unstuffed. All right. So this is going to take a little bit of maneuvering, but you're going to take, let me push back a little bit. You're going to take your hat and just kind of work it around the wreath. Now, obviously we're using a triangular hat on a round wreath, so, you know, it's not going to fit perfectly, but that's why we have glue. All right. So we're looking for something kind of like this. And don't worry about the flop of the hat. We'll take care of that. If you had pins that you wanted to secure it, you absolutely could. I'm going to use my glue gun. Make sure I've got it heated up here. I can never tell which way is on and which way is off because it doesn't say like on off. It's like I and X. What does that mean? I feel like it was not on. Now, the white yarn, if you find like lint on it, like, you know, from packaging or something, I'm finding it, I found a few pieces of brown lint because I had it stored with other yarn. Then just pull that lint off. But it will show on the white wreath. It doesn't show as much on the other wreaths. So I'm just waiting for my glue gun to heat up. Put it back in the recharger. While we're waiting on that, let's create the mustache with what's left. So take what is left of your white yarn and we're going to just measure. It doesn't have to be exact. Take the wreath and just measure across the wreath. And we're going to take maybe 3 lengths across. So I have it to be about like this. So take 1. You can either do it all as one continuous and just fold it back and forth, or you could cut each individual one, whichever you want. I think I'm gonna cut it there. All right, because we're going to add that in too, but we're going to do the hat first. And I actually just noticed I would rather use this side of the hat. The hat looked just a little odd that way, so we're going to do this side. Okay, now it's heating up. We're going to take the hat and we're going to glue to the yarn. So watch your fingers because hot glue gets hot, right? Now, if you don't want to glue it, you probably could pin it, you know, like a safety pin or something, but I'm going to glue it. So I'm going to take my glue gun and I have my hat. I'm trying to hold on to it. I'm just going to glue under the white part, okay? So bear with me here just a minute. Oh, it's still not coming out. There it goes. This is something you may end up having to do a couple of times. I gotta give it another minute. Also, I'm going to need another glue stick, so I'll be right back. Okay, so we are back. I have my hot glue gun, and this is going to be a little tricky. We are gluing essentially plush to plush, so it's not going to glue as easily as like paper or fabric, right? But just take your glue gun and come in under the white part of Santa's hat. I'm going to put the glue on the hat. You're probably going to want to be generous with this, and we are probably going to maybe have to do it multiple times. But I'm just going to start, glue it under the hat, and then I'm going to press that into the yarn and just hold it for a little bit. Now, this is the part where, since you are essentially touching hot liquid glue, you want to be careful. Right now I'm pressing through the outside of the hat, so I'm not really feeling it, but just be careful and don't get burned. Also, hot glue gives you the string things, which are fun. Okay, yep, I've got it on there now. And with one side secured, it's a little bit easier to do the other side. So you might need to adjust the hat a little bit more. You might need to adjust your yarn. So I have pulled the hat a little more tightly down onto the yarn, and I'm going to do the same thing. On the inside of the hat brim, we're going to take our hot glue, and I'm going to do several like kind of passes with the hot glue gun, and then fold it back onto the yarn and hold it. Now if you accidentally get glue on the yarn on the exterior outside the hat, just gently pull it off. Of course, you end up with the strings from the hot glue gun. And then once you have the hat on, this is where we kind of want to make sure, especially around the hat, that you're fluffing and you don't see the wreath form, right? You can do the hat however you want. I kind of like it, I feel like that way. If you wanted to pin the hat, this part, so it stayed a certain way, like actually I kind of like that. So I am going to just take a pin, and ideally I would have a red pin, but I don't. But I'm just kind of going to do that. You could pin it from the back. That might work better. Let's pin it from the back. Yeah, that works better. So you can see the black pin. I basically just pinned the hat. It's still going to flop. So like I said, if you want to put some stuffing in this, you can. But I think once it's against your door or your wall, it's not really going to flop very far. All right, so we have fluffed. And now all that's left is Santa's beard, or Santa's mustache. So we have the yarn that we cut off. There are two ways you could do this. You could tie it just like we've tied the rest of the yarn, or you could glue it. But we're going to go to the back of the wreath, and the mustache is going to go across the middle, right? But we want to attach it from the back. So I have the tail here, And I am honestly just going to go in here to one of these loops, roughly in the middle. And I'm just going to tie this tail around that. All right. So then we're going to see, do you see it coming together? Actually, we do want to, I think, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to keep the loops on this, but here's what I want to see. I'm going to cut one of these loops like we did at the beginning. That won't work. All right. So we are going to have to cut the strands. So when you're looking at the mustache, take your extra yarn and just measure. I did from about the middle of the wreath on the side to the middle on the side, and then cut it. And you're going to want to cut as many strips of these as you can. We can't do it as one strip, but if you want it to be 2, if you want it to be 3, again, we're going to then cut our loop. All right. So I've tied one strand. I now have my second strand, and I am going to come across and just kind of tie it to one of the loops. All right. That is a little loose. Trial and error. Just keep trying. I'm gonna just do another one here. And this one is the demo, so if things get messed up, it's totally okay, right? All right, that's better. You might want it a little tighter. And if you do, just kind of pull it. You could also pin it if you needed to. Okay, so I've tied it there. If you want to cut it as one piece, then you would probably need to hot glue. So let's see how it works hot gluing. I'm going to take my yarn, take the tail of the yarn, and literally I'm just going to glue it here into place. So be careful of your fingers, especially as it gets more hot, like that. Yeah. I would recommend using some sort of if you have gloves or something, to hold it into place. I have lint all over it because it got on the floor. Santa's a mess right now, y'all. Santa is a mess. Okay. So here I've hot glued it for the second one. And I'm going to hot glue on the other side. Use a pen to hold it rather than my fingers. If you have any sort of gloves, or, I mean, you could use like an oven mitt even to hold on to it so that the glue is not burning off your fingerprints, unless you need it to. And then, hey. All right, so I've glued it now across. You also might need to, as I'm noticing, secure the back of the hat. So I'm going to see if that'll glue to the frame. I think it will. All right, that should work. Okay. So we have the mustache. I'm going to come back through one more time with the mustache. So I'm just going to take it from the back where I hot glued it, take it across hot glue it on the other side again, just to give that mustache a little bit more fullness. All right. And then you can cut off the excess. So I'm gonna come into here and cut it. All right. All right. So there's our Santa wreath. And you can play with the hat. Like I said, you can play with it, whatever you need to do. All right. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Bye-bye.